Hello, I'm Gabriela Fahangi from Kalonish Power Materials, and I'm here today with Graham Cooley from ITM Power. Hi, Graham.
Hello, hi everyone.
Thanks for joining us. Right, I'm going to start our interview asking you the question everybody wants to know. So, how can hydrogen become a reality, and what are the current challenges to enabling a broad penetration on hydrogen or in transport, in energy storage, industrial use?
Sure, thanks for having me, first of all. How can hydrogen become a reality? Hydrogen is a huge reality already. So, there's 70 million tons per year of hydrogen sold. It goes into refining, production of ammonia and methanol, and in the metals treatment industry. So, it already is a reality. The question, probably a better question, is how do you decarbonize it? How, in other words, does green hydrogen become a reality? Because hydrogen itself obviously is. Let me just explain, first of all, what it is we do and what green hydrogen is. At ITM, we make electrolysis equipment. The electrolyzer is the device you use to couple to renewable power, split water, make hydrogen and oxygen. And the hydrogen you make, if you make it with renewable power and you split water, is net zero. And it is the only net zero fuel. It's the only net zero replacement for natural gas. And by net zero, I mean there's no carbon in its entire supply chain. So you start with renewable electrons, in other words, renewable power, and you put those electrons into an electrolyzer and they split water, and you make renewable molecules. And the point there is that molecules are storable. So you turn something which is not storable and net zero into something which is storable that you can use in industry, and it has a huge market today. So when you say about the reality, and particularly for green hydrogen, it's about reducing cost and increasing scale.
Yes, you're
Very
touching where I was going to go. We need a higher penetration. There has been hydrogen based on fossil fuels for quite a long time, and as you said, green hydrogen is the new thing and is the solution to get to a net zero. But so, how do we reduce cost to make it broader application and use these days?
the way we reduce the cost, first of all, the cost of green hydrogen is most strongly dependent on the cost of the renewable power and its load factor. So the places in the world where you can make very, very low cost green hydrogen is where you have high load factor, low cost renewables. So that's the first point. Second point, of course, is that you need to increase the volume of the electrolysis production. So if you look at the IEA report, which was announced in May, it says that the world needs 3,500 gigawatts of electrolysis. Okay, that's a market of $2 trillion, a huge, huge market. And that's the amount of electrolysis we need to get to net zero by 2050. 2050 is 29 years away. And we moved in this year to the world's largest electrolyzer factory, and it has a capacity of 1 gigawatt per annum. And the world needs 3,500 gigawatts in 29 years. So scale is an issue. As you scale up, you increase production. Natural economics tell you you'll decrease costs. So not only are you looking for very low cost renewable power, but you're looking for a very efficient electrolyzer that's low cost. And those two things. And the last thing is deployment at volume. We work with our partner, who's our EPC contractor, Linde Engineering. And while we're scaling the manufacturing of the electrolysis, they scale the deployment. So they are the world's largest deployer of hydrogen assets worldwide. So there's those three things: low cost renewable power, manufacturing efficient electrolysis at volume, and deployment at volume.
What do you see as a major challenge to get to tackle this? Do you think policy making has a huge weight on that?
I think the most important aspect of green hydrogen now is going to be policy driving the business model. And the business models are dominated by tolling through renewable power and replacing grey hydrogen, which is made by natural gas. So the direct replacement is this: you make hydrogen that's derived from the feedstock that is renewable power rather than natural gas. And the natural gas route is lower cost at the moment. When we get to scale, then the renewable energy route will be lower cost. And the predictions are between the mid 2020s to the 2030 will be lower cost than grey hydrogen. And it's the key for adoption is to incentivize the early adoption. This is the oil and gas companies and the renewable energy companies, one wanting energy storage and the other one wanting net zero molecules.
So that's a very interesting point there. How do you get away from replace grey hydrogen with green hydrogen? Do you bridge with blue hydrogen, or do you think blue hydrogen, which is natural gas derived with CCUS, is it a waste of time, or is it a necessary step to get to green hydrogen?
So blue hydrogen is oil and gas business as usual. It's about using the existing methane infrastructure. It's about using that infrastructure and the requirement to provide two additional infrastructures. One is a hydrogen infrastructure and the other is a CO2 infrastructure. Big capital schemes, putting CO2 pipes on the seabed, sequestering hydrogen offshore. They're massive schemes, whereas green hydrogen, you can start buying electrolyzers now, you can build up the fleet incrementally, and you can start the you can start the CO2 reduction process immediately. So I think that there's very significant problems with CCS. We've seen the results of the trials of CCS, and people tell me, you know, that CCS is a known, understood, and fully developed technology, and we've seen from recent announcements that it isn't. And also, we've seen that the carbon footprint of blue hydrogen not only has emissions from incomplete capture, but nobody has included the emissions from the methane network. And methane is a more powerful greenhouse gas than CO2. You don't need to make the CO2 at all. You just use green hydrogen right from the beginning, and you scale up the technology that you're ultimately going to need to use. And that's, I think, increasingly understood now in industry.
Yeah, I see sometimes market players question some policies, some governments' strategies, including the UK. The UK is betting on both blue and green. Do you think the position of the government should change the approach? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, the UK government's strategy is a combined strategy of blue hydrogen and green hydrogen. But when they selected projects to do feed studies in the cluster decarbonisation call, they funded all blue hydrogen projects. And today, there hasn't been a single large-scale industrial green hydrogen project funded in the UK. So it's a question of the government putting their money where their mouth is, frankly. You know, if you look all over Europe, there are very large-scale electrolyzer projects being developed. Worldwide, the Aurora Energy Report will tell you that worldwide there are 200 gigawatts of electrolyzer projects under development, 85% of them in Europe. And we bid, over the last 12 months, we bid quotations quotations for commercial tenders. These are competitive international tenders. We bid 1,011 megawatts of equipment over the last 12 months. That's just over a gigawatt. We also moved in this year to the world's largest electrolyzer factory, which has a capacity of a gigawatt. The market in Sheffield, yeah. So the market is moving incredibly quickly, but not in the UK.
Right. That's interesting. The IEA came with a report, a hydrogen-focused report this week. The view is that it's happening, it's progressing, but not enough to meet the carbon neutrality and net zero ambitions by 2050. According to the report, there are 350 electrolyzers being developed today. By 2030, this would become as a capacity of 8 million tons of green hydrogen, but we need 80 million tons by then to meet the 2050. Can we meet the 2050, and how important is hydrogen really to help decarbonize the hard to abate industry and sectors? And which sector do you think is the most promising in terms of hydrogen consumption?
Yeah, I mean, you start with the existing market for hydrogen, which is derived from natural gas, which is refineries, ammonia, and methanol. So just to explain those, every refinery uses hydrogen for desulfurization or for primary cracking. And all refineries in Europe have to make 14% of their product renewably in the next decade. That's the Renewable Energy Directive, RED II. So they have an obligation to replace their grey hydrogen with green hydrogen, and that's a massive market. So our first refinery electrolyzer was 10 megawatts at the Rhineland refinery in Germany. We got the announcement recently that Shell is going to build with us and Linde 100 megawatts at the Rhineland refinery. The 10 megawatt installation makes 1% of the hydrogen used at the refinery. If you wanted to completely decarbonize the Rhineland refinery, you'd need a gigawatt of electrolysis. And that's one refinery of one oil and gas company. So it's a massive, massive market out there and moving extremely quickly. Ammonia uses 4 to 6% annually of the world's energy, and it's the largest market for hydrogen. And ammonia is the world's fertilizer. So you take hydrogen and nitrogen from the air, you react them together in the Haber-Bosch process, and you produce NH3. Mm-hmm. You have to have the hydrogen molecule to make NH3, and it's the world's fertilizer. It's also a hydrogen energy transport medium, because when you make ammonia, you can put it in a tanker and ship it around the world, and you could crack the hydrogen out. So not only is hydrogen important because it's storable, but it's also transportable. So you go, renewable energy gives you renewable molecules. The renewable molecules can then be formed into either ammonia or methanol, and you can use them as a liquid fuel, or you can transport them and crack the energy out. You've now got a way of importing and exporting renewable power, which the world never had before. You turn renewable energy into a commodity. And that's incredibly important for net zero.
Absolutely. And we've seen Australia and Japan doing some trials, Saudi Arabia. Let's move a bit towards refueling infrastructure. So how is it in the UK or even Europe? What do you think the deployment of hydrogen stations, are they happening fast enough? Can hydrogen really take up on mobility?
Yeah, so our emphasis in mobility is heavy vehicles. So it's trucks and trains and buses. So I think the way you should think about it is very small, short-range vehicles will be powered by net zero electrons. Larger range vehicles that need to be refueled quickly and go very long distances, and also value payload, will use hydrogen. Buses, trucks, and trains, first of all. Also, when you get the hydrogen molecule and you make ammonia or methanol, you have either aviation fuel or marine fuel, and that's transport as well. So as you get larger and larger, the proposition changes, goes from electrons to pure hydrogen, from pure hydrogen to methanol and ammonia, sustainable aviation fuel or sustainable marine fuel. What about refueling stations for trucks and buses and so on? So you probably know this, but we built most of the hydrogen refueling stations in the UK, deployed them on Shell forecourts, and then a very important partnership with Shell and with Linde deploying those refueling stations. They are the early network in the UK, and all of the Toyota Mirais and Hyundais in the UK use our hydrogen network. We opened Birmingham, which is a bus refueling station, and that's refueling buses with National Express. And our rollout will be associated with those heavier vehicles. Is it happening fast enough? I think that if you look at the UK government as an excellent example, the UK government have put more than 30 times as much money into a plug-in infrastructure as they have a hydrogen refueling infrastructure. We haven't even got started. There's no RTFO in the UK for green hydrogen that's usable. Even though green hydrogen today is very cost competitive per mile with diesel, the UK government still subsidises diesel for buses and does not subsidise green hydrogen. The BSOG in the UK, it gives bus operators a subsidy for diesel, and they do not incentivise green hydrogen for buses. It is astonishing.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No.
No, it doesn't. Thank you. That's really insightful. Now, just to round up, talk to us about ITM's project and ambitions and what's in the pipeline, what's exciting coming up.
Yeah, so we gave what's a gigawatt. We moved into the world's largest electrolyzer factory. We got to a backlog of 310 megawatts. We delivered the world's largest electrolyzer at the Rhineland refinery. We got the order for the next world's largest electrolyzer of 24 megawatts. So we leapfrogged ourselves. And then about 3 or 4 weeks after that, got the announcement of the Shell 100 megawatts, leapfrogging ourselves again with the world's largest electrolyzer. That's all in a year. And we did all of it, including moving into the new factory during a pandemic.
That's excellent.
It's been incredibly heavy lifting for ITM Power over the last year. We have significant resources on our balance sheet. We raised 172 million in October of last year. We got really strong backing from the City of London. And I can tell you that the city understands the hydrogen industry really well. And they understand the difference between all the different colours of hydrogen, and they're all ESG investors, and everyone's interested in investing in electrolysis equipment and green hydrogen, not doing fossil fuel hydrogen.
Excellent. The private sector is going to push hydrogen, green hydrogen forward. Excellent, Graham. Thank you so much for all your time and your answers. Very insightful. And I look forward to hearing more exciting news from ITM Power.
Thank you, Gabriella. Thanks for having me.